Welcome to another episode of Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by baremetalcyber.com. Let's dive in. An operating system is the essential layer that manages hardware, runs programs, and organizes files, and it quietly decides what every application can and cannot do. The formal term is operating system, OS, and it coordinates memory, processes, storage, and devices while presenting a consistent environment for software. Because every task flows through the OS, weaknesses here ripple outward and become weaknesses for everything that depends on it. Securing the OS, therefore, becomes the foundation for securing laptops, servers, and even small devices that handle important information. A clear picture of how the OS works helps explain where controls should be placed and why they matter. Throughout this episode, each principle connects to an everyday action that any beginner can understand and apply with confidence. Accounts define who can act on the OS, so understanding roles is a direct path to safety. Most systems include standard users for daily work, administrators or root for system changes, and service accounts for background tasks and applications. Separating these roles reduces the blast radius when mistakes happen, because routine activities do not need broad system powers. On Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, a daily driver account should usually be standard, while administrative credentials are reserved for short, intentional tasks. Service accounts should have the narrowest possible rights because they never open documents, browse the web, or need personal conveniences. When each role matches its real purpose, fewer actions can accidentally change the entire system, and more problems stay contained. Least privilege turns that idea into a daily habit, and small design choices make it easy to keep. Windows includes User Account Control, UAC, to request elevation only when changes require it, while Linux and Mac OS often use the sudo command to run a single administrative action with audit trail and accountability. Tools like runus or temporary elevation give the needed access for only the short time that it is actually needed. A good routine uses standard rights for browsing, email, and editing files, and then elevates briefly when installing software or changing settings. Combining short elevation with clear prompts creates a natural pause that defeats many social engineering tricks. When elevation becomes rare and deliberate, unexpected prompts stand out and receive the skepticism they deserve. Strong authentication starts at the OS sign-in screen and continues anywhere accounts are used locally or centrally. Password policies that require longer passphrases, unique reuse intervals, and lockouts on repeated failures significantly reduce guessing and stuffing attacks. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, strengthens accounts further using hardware tokens, mobile prompts, or biometrics that resist replay. Local accounts live on the device, while directory accounts are managed centrally, which allows consistent policies and swift disabling when needed. Short timeouts and automatic screen locks reduce the window for shoulder surfing or opportunistic misuse at shared spaces. When the first barrier is both convenient and strong, attackers must work harder while daily routines stay smooth and predictable. Authorization controls decide what a signed-in account can touch, and file systems offer precise ways to enforce that decision. Ownership and permissions define who can read, write, or execute, while an access control list, ACL, adds fine-grained entries for specific users and groups. Inheritance applies permissions from folders to their contents, which makes consistent structures easy to maintain at scale. Effective permissions analysis shows the actual result after ownership, group membership, and ACL entries combine, which often reveals surprises that were not obvious at first glance. Practical hygiene keeps sensitive folders restricted, public folders truly public, and shared areas clearly documented so access is intentional. Good authorization turns accidental exposure into a rare event rather than a weekly scare. Processes must be isolated so one program cannot tamper with another, and modern protections make that separation tougher to break. Code signing verifies that programs and drivers come from trusted sources, which prevents many silent insertions during installation or updates. Data execution prevention, DEP, stops memory areas meant for data from running code, while address space layout randomization shuffles where things live in memory to break predictable exploits. Kernel driver signing raises the bar further by requiring stronger trust for the most powerful software that interacts directly with hardware. Sandboxing and application isolation add layers so untrusted code cannot escape into more sensitive areas easily. Each mechanism removes assumptions an attacker depends on, which forces mistakes to become visible and recoverable. Many compromises begin at startup, so controlling services, daemons, and auto-start entries keeps the system quiet and predictable. An inventory of what launches at boot reveals programs that no longer serve a purpose or that duplicate built-in features. Disabling or removing unnecessary services reduces attack surface and frees resources, which improves performance while improving security. Background processes that stay resident can become persistence points for malware, so reviewing launch agents, startup folders, scheduled tasks, and service managers deserves regular attention. Minimal startup also makes troubleshooting easier because new problems stand out against a steady baseline. A smaller set of essential services means fewer moving parts and fewer places for an attacker to hide for long. The network edge of a device deserves the same disciplined approach, starting with a host firewall that watches inbound and outbound traffic. Built-in firewalls can enforce rules that limit which programs talk to the network and which ports accept connections. Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP, and Secure Shell, SSH, provide remote access, but they must be configured carefully with strong authentication, limited exposure, and monitoring for repeated attempts. Port awareness matters because an internet-facing service with weak settings can become an open front door overnight. Practical rules favor known applications, block the rest by default, and prompt when new programs seek access. Clear decisions at this layer turn unknown network activity into an exception that receives quick review. Keeping software current is one of the highest value habits because it removes known weaknesses before they are widely abused. Operating system updates close privilege escalation paths, driver updates improve stability and security, and firmware updates fix foundational issues that live below the OS. Scheduling updates and planning restarts ensure that fixes land without disrupting important work, which increases compliance over time. Central tools like Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, or managed repositories help teams test and stage updates safely. On individual systems, built-in updaters and unattended upgrades can handle routine patches while saving manual effort. Reliable updating patterns convert surprise vulnerabilities into routine maintenance rather than weekend emergencies. Secure configuration baselines translate best practices into concrete settings that real systems can follow and keep. The Center for Internet Security, CIS, benchmarks, and vendor guides provide researched recommendations for password rules, services, logging, network controls, and many other items. A baseline becomes real when tools enforce it, such as group policy for Windows, configuration management for servers, or mobile device management, MDM, profiles for laptops and tablets. Exceptions are documented and time-boxed so temporary needs do not become permanent risks by accident. Periodic verification confirms that systems still match the baseline after updates and software changes. When the baseline is living and enforced, drift slows down and security stops depending on individual memory. Evidence matters during and after an incident, and logging gives that evidence a reliable voice. Windows Event Viewer, syslog with journaled, and audit deed record authentication attempts, policy changes, service starts, and program crashes that explain what happened and when. Endpoint detection and response, EDR tools, build on those events with timeline views, process trees, and behavioral detections that connect small clues into clear stories. Time synchronization and consistent retention create trustworthy timelines that hold up during reviews and lessons learned. Practical routines include checking for noisy failures, enabling auditing on sensitive actions, and forwarding important logs to a secure place. When logging is tuned and stored safely, problems become explainable and improvements become specific. Protecting data at rest and enabling recovery turns small incidents into minor pauses rather than lasting harm. Full disk encryption with BitLocker, FileVault, or LUKS protects lost or stolen devices by requiring the right keys before any data becomes readable. A trusted platform module, TPM, can bind encryption to the device, while recovery keys are stored safely so hardware failures do not lock out owners. System restore points, file system snapshots, and image-based backups reduce recovery time after failed updates, corruption, or ransomware. Regular restore tests prove that backups are not just copies, but actual lifelines that work as intended. With encryption and recovery combined, confidentiality and availability support each other without constant attention. The core habits of OS security are simple to name and powerful to practice together every day. Use least privilege so routine work stays safe, and elevate briefly with clear prompts only when changes are actually needed. Keep authentication strong with unique passphrases and MFA, and match authorization to real duties so access aligns with purpose. Minimize services and auto-start entries, keep updates current from firmware to applications, and anchor configurations in a living baseline that resists drift. Enable logging that answers questions quickly, and protect data with full disk encryption and tested backups that restore confidence after mistakes. With these habits reinforcing each other, operating systems remain resilient, predictable, and ready for the work they support. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.